2 weeks have passed in the January transfer window, and as probably a lot of us expected, Tottenham haven't done all too much. We obviously brought in Antonin Kinski in the opening days of the window, but since then, it's been very, very quiet, and Ange Postecoglou has been in the media recently talking about how he needs reinforcements desperately. But here we are, I'm recording this on the 17th of January, and nothing has been achieved. We need reinforcements in attack, in defence, in midfield, but it looks like the club are struggling to get any deals over the line. The big one being Randal Kolo Muani, who is off to Juventus. He had the choice between the old lady and Tottenham Hotspur, and he chose to go to Italy, leaving PSG on a straight loan, by the way. Not even a buy option, not even a buy obligation. PSG sanctioned a straight 6-month loan move to Juventus. I believe that's what was on the cards for Tottenham as well, but it seems he would rather play in the Serie A than the Premier League. There's not really too much we can do about it. I know a few people were getting angry about the fact that he chose Juventus over Tottenham. You can argue that you can't really blame him considering where Spurs are in the league. They're not playing Champions League football. It's one of those, unfortunately. It's just one of those. It is what it is. It was the player's decision and he chose the other club. We've seen it before. We will undoubtedly see it again, and we have to, unfortunately, just move on from that. It is, of course, as I've mentioned, the end of the second week of the transfer window. So the 2 weeks down, just under 2 weeks to go. And there have been a whole host of transfer rumours floating about the place, as there usually is, albeit they have slowed down significantly in recent days. Since the Kolo Muani deal died, there haven't been too many names emerging in the news. We know, and I've talked about in previous videos, that Johan Lange loves to work under the radar and names just sort of pop out of nowhere. And based on what Ange Postecoglou has been saying to the press, I believe that will be the case for our next signing. Ahead of the Everton game, the Spurs boss has said that he needs reinforcements through the door as quickly as possible, ideally by the end of this week. He says he knows that the club are doing everything they can behind the scenes, but it's tricky. We've heard that one before. We heard it from Mourinho, we heard it from Pochettino, we heard it from Antonio Conte. So whether that will change and we will actually bring in some faces by the end of the month is anyone's guess. But Ange has been very, very vocal in his desire to bring fresh faces to this squad and just to help us turn around this poor form. So without further ado, really, let's talk about some of the names that have been floating around this week. And if you are new around here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. 95% of you watching this video are not subscribed to the channel, so all it takes is just scroll down and hit that subscribe button, and it helps me out massively. So I'll start this with a name that we were linked with last week and are still associated with another week into the transfer window, and that is PSG's Milan Skriniar. It does seem that there is genuine interest from Spurs for the Slovakian defender. The highly credited sort of French source L'Equipe are reporting that Spurs wish to do a loan deal for Skriniar until the end of the season, which PSG are open to as long as they can sort of have an agreement in place. There are easy targets to work towards between both clubs that could make that deal permanent at the end of the season. Again, I mentioned this in my last video. I think he'd be a great signing. There have been sort of rumours going around over the last few days that Spurs may expect Christian Romero to be off in the summer. So a defender of Skriniar's calibre to replace him would not be the worst thing in the world. So if this is a deal that Tottenham do decide to pursue, I'd be absolutely for it. But I'm not going to linger on the name too much because I did talk about it in last week's video. Now, here's a familiar name for you Tottenham fans. Ansu Fati. Yes, that is another name who has been linked with the club in the last week or so. Now, those of you that are Tottenham sufferers like myself will remember that Spurs were so close to signing Ansu Fati on loan from Barcelona last season. But in the end, he ended up going to Brighton. I think it was a combination of knowing that he'd get more game time there and the fact that Brighton were doing really well in the season convinced him to go there, and Barcelona were more than happy to sanction that move, knowing he was going to get loads of minutes on the pitch. The thing is, though, Ansu Fati had a lot of injuries during his time at Brighton. He didn't get as many minutes as he perhaps would have wanted. But here we are again, being linked with the winger. He hasn't really played for Barcelona at all this season. Hansi Flick's side have been excellent for the most part. They've battered Real Madrid twice. You know, they're progressing in the Copa del Rey and with the shot of winning La Liga, Champions League, all of that in between as well. But here we are, linked with Ansu Fati, who I'm not sure. It's very difficult because I'm sort of on the line of thinking any winger we bring in will be better than Timo Werner and Brennan Johnson if he's not on form. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, is he the calibre of winger we want? Is he any better than Wilson Odobert? Is he any better than Wilson Odobert? I know Odebert's not due back from injury for a long, long time yet. But would it just be, in this case, signing for the sake of signing? Also, Flick has come out to the media and said that Fati has not asked to leave. So whether these rumours actually have any strength to them, I'm unsure. But he is one to keep an eye on towards the last week or so, I think, of the transfer window. If we still haven't managed to sign any of the top targets on our list, it could be one that Spurs and Ange Postecoglou decide to pull the trigger on. Next up is David Fratesi from Inter Milan. This is a midfielder, 25 years of age, who really impressed Inter Milan during his spell at Sassuolo. He joined them at the start of last season, was part of that squad that won the Serie A title with Inter Milan last term, but his game time has sort of dwindled a little bit more this season. He is a dynamic box-to-box midfielder, really good runner. He reminds me almost of a little bit of Pat Matassar, of Lucas Bergvall, that high-intensity, high-energy running midfielder who can do a job in the attacking third and in the defensive third. Very well-rounded individual who we have been linked with, I think even before this January transfer window opened. Fratesi's a name that has been associated with the club for a little while. I do believe our relationship with Inter Milan is relatively decent. But again, it's nothing more than sort of just like rumours and links at the moment. I guess all of these names are really, until it's official and they're holding up the shirt, all they are rumours. But his name does keep popping up time and time again. I don't think it's that sort of glamorous name that a lot of Tottenham fans want to see walk through the door, but I do feel like he would be a strong addition to the squad, add a lot of depth, and of course be knocking on the door, if not walking into that starting 11. Now here's a name that will excite you, Bryan Mbeumo. Tottenham are reportedly one of many clubs that are looking at the Brentford forward. Of course, he has been tearing it up in the Premier League. I don't really need to go into too much detail about how good Bryan Mbeumo has been this season. Him and Johan Visser for Brentford have been absolutely fantastic. The Bees under Thomas Frank have one of the best home records in the league. Even when Brentford are losing games, you'll see Bryan Mbeumo either on the score or assisting sheet more often than not. He would be a fantastic signing for Tottenham. A really nice profile of striker/winger that could play across that front line that Ange Postecoglou is looking for. The issue is Brentford would demand a very hefty fee for him. I don't think Thomas Frank has any plans to sell him in the middle of a season, which is understandable. He's probably been their best player this term, and this is probably maybe more geared to a summer pursuit if we haven't signed someone else before that time comes around. Although I feel like we will be battling a lot of competition for Mbeumo's signature. We would have to be forking out a decent transfer fee. I don't think his wages would be an issue. I think that would fit right into the Tottenham structure, but I would be surprised if Brentford are looking at any less than 60-70 million for Mbeumo. The last name I want to mention is a player called Richard Rios. He is a Colombian midfielder from Palmeiras in Brazil, 24 years old. This guy has an £83 million release clause, having just signed a new contract that keeps him at Palmeiras until 2028. However, reports have emerged suggesting Tottenham could do a deal worth base 15 or 20 million if Palmeiras decide they want to sell him and cash in on him. Vitor Ruiz has just signed for Manchester City from Palmeiras. They do have a very good history and record of producing some excellent players over the years, and it's a name that I believe is on Ange Postecoglou's list, and a lot of Tottenham scouts and those who do the analysis and look at the data have highly recommended. He's a Copa America finalist with Colombia. He is a tough tackling, ball-playing midfielder, someone who commands the pitch, someone that would really add a bit of strength to our midfield. That Rodri-esque type player who loves to put in a tackle, but also can do wonders with the ball. People might look at a name like Richard Rios and not be too eager or too excited about it because he is relatively unknown. Unsurprisingly, you can pull a lot of gems out of South America, and he certainly is one. Again, I do think it's a player that is highly sought after by a few clubs, but it's definitely one to keep an eye on. So there's some different names out there since the Kolo Muani deal has fallen through. Rashford's name is still lurking about there a little bit as well, but I don't see that happening. So let me know down in the comments, out of the names that I've mentioned in this video, who would you be most excited for Tottenham to sign? Hopefully, by the time this is edited and sent out and the weekend is passed, we will have a win under our belts against Everton. We will have signed a new player. Mickey van der Ven and Christian Romero will be back. Ange Postecoglou confirming that both will be back in the next week or two, which suggests that maybe Tottenham may hold off on signing a defender, which I think is a very silly move considering how easily both of them get injured and the fact that we just need the depth and the cover anyway. But again, it's one to keep an eye on. I do think the next signing that we see will be an attacker. I just don't know who. But that's about it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you did enjoy, and as I mentioned, subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. I will be back after the Everton game with a reaction piece. Let's hope that this weekend is the weekend we finally get our season back on track. We're sitting 14th in the table, overtaken by West Ham and Manchester United in the last few days. We've got to start getting points, and quickly. I'll catch you soon, and as always, come on you Spurs.